Welcome to the Mischief Maker broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hey guys, Baby Joel here. You know, ever since my sister has been taking me out in my stroller, she's been so rude to me. Pushing me around, talking behind my back.
Hey, there we go. We got Baby Joel on the show tonight, and we're going to be making that a regular feature on the Mischief Maker show. Now, what's a Mischief Maker? Well, it's someone who is, I guess we could say, leads a curiosity-driven life, takes a look at things through a different lens, doesn't mind asking the tough questions or mind being asked the tough questions. We also have a Mischief Maker, someone who is just a person that doesn't mind asking the what-if questions. In fact, whenever being in a situation where it's very little information, very little, it seems like a fog, just saying, what if money was no object? What if we were to try this? And so tonight we're going to be talking with someone who's asked a lot of what if questions and has answered a lot of those what if questions. His name is Jason A. Swanston. He's become a very dear friend, and I think you're going to understand why as we talk tonight. There's no topic, no subject that we're unwilling to uncover and to discuss. And he's a leader in the new media technology for today's millennials. He holds a patent in technology that, well, I'm going to let him talk about that kind of stuff. It's something called OVNIO. And we're going to talk about some of his struggles, some of his challenges. But first, before we do that, there's a song I want to play for you. It's kind of a bluesy type song. It's called Hurricane Bigotry. The story quickly behind it, in fact, I'm not going to tell too much about the story because I've written a booklet about it called Hurricane Bigotry. And you can pick it up on Amazon. It's on eBay. You can go to our QR code just above at the very top of your screen. And hopefully if you're on a laptop or if you're on a desktop, you just get your cell phone out. And for those of you who know how to do this, please allow me to do this for those who don't. But you just turn your camera on and then you go on the QR code and it'll take you straight to chiefmischiefmaker.com. And once you get there, I think it's number 4 down, you can just click on that and you learn more about that. And then, of course, we have about our guests and everything else. I want to welcome people who are dialing in from Japan, from Canada, India, Australia, United Kingdom, all across the United States. And for those who are on a affiliate station with the BBC, I think there's some 16,000 of them out there that are connected or have the ability to bring this show on. I'd like for you to reach out to your station manager and say, hey, get the Mischief Maker show on. Come on, let's check it out. And hopefully we can expand the number of folks who come on this show. So right now, Mel, our wonderful producer, if you could just put on that song, Hurricane Bigotry. Here we are.
Age, a young black man heard the words that sting. As years passed, he leaned into the wind like howling wolf, and BB King. Different rules apply based on skin. A broken world, where do we begin? Life's lens altered, a new reality found. Injustice and prejudice seen all around. Yet he chose to rise amidst the storm's roar, finding strength within like never before. Hurricane bigotry swirling so strong, even with God it's tough, where do we belong? Category 5 with its force unyielding, but he stood tall against the winds revealing. Like Katrina's fury, with its wrath untamed, he faced adversity, yet remained unchained. Like Andrew's power, destructive and fierce, but his spirit endured, never to pierce. Through the years he learned to navigate the tempest of bias, fueled by hate. Leaning into the wind with steadfast grace, his equilibrium intact in life's race. In the eye of the storm he found the truth, resilience and hope, his guiding sleuth. Hurricane bigotry may rage and shout, but his spirit endures, there's no doubt. Hurricane bigotry swirling so strong, even with God it's tough, where do we belong? Category 5 with its force unyielding, but he stood tall against the winds revealing. Hurricane bigotry swirling so strong, even with God it's tough, where do we belong? Category 5 with its force unyielding, but he stood tall against the winds revealing. Against the winds revealing.
Well, that's a song that I wrote some years back and produced, turned it into a booklet called Hurricane Bigotry that you can pick up on Amazon, eBay, or go to the website, use the QR code and check it out. I think you'll like to hear the story or read the story behind the song. It's a rather compelling story, I believe. Hurricane bigotry comes from the whole idea of wind getting a name at a sustained speed of 75 miles per hour. Now, in other countries, we have typhoons and other situations that come in and have just terrible destruction all across different parts of the world. And of course, we have tornadoes, other types of things that happen. But I wanted to use the imagery of a hurricane as it describes how we as human beings have things that come against us, and how we learn how to lean into the wind without losing our sense of humor, without losing our sense of purpose, and somehow navigate our way through life without losing the equilibrium of life, spirit, soul, body, and to be able to function with people around us who are dealing with their own hurricane force winds. And so if you're in Japan, for instance, in listening to watching the show tonight, if someone's from Korea visiting in Japan, they're feeling winds at 150 miles per hour. Across Europe, in parts of Scandinavia, someone from the Roma group, gypsies, feeling tremendous wind forces. In Great Britain, if you have the wrong cadence of speech, or you come from a certain part of London, and or the further north, the thicker the accent, someone can immediately tell someone from Scotland or from Yorkshire. And the thicker the accent, the less people are viewed as someone from the middle of London or something like that. So this happens in so many different places. There's the casta system in Mexico. The darker the skin, the darker the hue, the more difficult it is for a person. Of course, across India, one could say, well, we live in an enlightened society now, and the caste system is no longer existent. Oh, yes, it is. All across the country of India, different parts of the world. And we have the Aboriginals in Australia and in Canada, in here in America. We have all kinds of different layers and different situations around this whole topic. So tonight I've invited a very dear friend, Jason Swanston, to be with us this evening. And Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We have no clapping, no canned clapping, but I'll do it a little bit to help out here. But it is such an honor and a privilege to have you here on the show. We've got folks here, some of your biggest fans are saying, go Jason. We've got people from Ohio and other places that are giving you the thumbs up. Tonight, maybe if you can share a little bit before we get into the topic of hurricane bigotry, maybe a little bit of how we met and how we connected. I think it was Ivan Van Sertima was a part of that space. But
Yes.
Give us a quick overview of how we connected.
Sure. We connected through a mutual business associate of ours with regards to me soliciting great people like yourself who had artifacts that I was interested in digitizing in the metaverse for young people to basically be attracted to just the notion of history and digitizing history and minting history for the future beyond. And so when we got on the phone, it was a conference call with about 8 people, and you and I just literally went down a vortex of conversation with regards to history, African history, Black Americana history, Black Americana artifacts. And you told me that you had a relationship with Ivan Van Sertima, who was a very astute and renowned historian that I was brought up to know, to understand, and to read about outside of school at the age of 13 by Dr. Leonard Jeffries at City College. And so when you told me that, you and Mr. Sertima were even in contact, that literally sealed the deal for me in terms of engaging you and not only becoming your friend, but also just understanding that you really truly went down the rabbit hole and knew, how to take our Black culture and just respect it with just taking these particular giants that I grew up knowing, like Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Ben Yakman, and taking their words and saying, hey, listen, I'm going to put this into a pamphlet, into a booklet, and I want to take it into the future. I'm not going to just keep it in a textbook format. I'm going to, venture out. And so that's how we met. And when you said, Jason, I'm with you, let's take it to the next level. Let's allow young people to see these various different artifacts that I have, 3,000 plus artifacts that I have in the metaverse, that right there was just a godsend. And I just said, you know what, this guy, Dr. Freeman, everybody calls you Joel. I call you Dr. Freeman. Said this guy is going to be my family forever. So that's how we met. And from that point on, we just never stopped talking and building, as we say in Harlem. We never stopped building. and from that point on, I was just enamored with just your understanding, to culture, anthropology, archaeology, just societal norms. That's what my takeaway with our relationship has always been about. And that's what I missed, with having my grandmother, who was a historian, not just a Black American historian, but just a world history historian in-house, teaching me about, the Japanese culture, the Jewish culture, from religion to society. So that's how we met, and that's why we're as thick as thieves today. No.
You lived in India, you've lived in Hollywood, you started college around 15 years of age,
Yeah.
and you sat under the teaching of some incredible Afrocentric scholars at a very young age. And tell us a little bit about when you went to Hollywood. This was in the very beginning of the whole digital thing,
Yeah.
MySpace and all the rest of it. And you worked with about 80 Michael Jackson and a bunch of other folks in helping them in the digital, introducing them to the digital age. Explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. It's well because back in those days when MySpace and a couple and Habbo and Friendster, those were the Instagrams and TikToks of the time, were basically penetrating the boardrooms and the studios, whereby people were starting to have conversations on these platforms. Back in those days, we had blogs. You wrote a blog. The publicist wrote a blog, and that was it. We're talking about American Online days, from the late 90s into the 2000s. And so what I basically did was, because I have my knowledge with technology and front end and back end development, I saw where the evolution of conversation was going in terms of selling a product, as well as selling ancillary products directly from the actual television show or the movie. I said to myself, well, you know what, this is where the future is going. I've done it in the music industry, and I met a woman. She got me into the film and television world by introducing me to a business partner of mine. His name was Stanley Kaplan, a very dear friend of mine. He's up in heaven right now, but he taught me the ropes. And what I did was I became a small talent manager just to get into the business. But what I realized was that there was a void that needed to be filled. And that void was getting the Hollywood studios, as well as the producers of major feature films that I was booking talent in, to repurpose their marketing efforts into the digital space. And what I was successful in doing was basically letting them know, hey, listen, there's another way to put seats into bodies into the seats of these these productions at various different movie theaters. And how you do that is through digital strategy. How you do that is by protecting your digital rights management. So that's where I carved out my own niche, Dr. Freeman, with regards to talking to the producers as well as the underwriters who financed some of the feature films. Yes, even though I was a talent manager, I did have just a different approach than the average person who was walking into those particular meetings. And I said, hey, listen, talent is one thing, but if you're having a problem, because I'm hearing these conversations, right? I'm like, if you're having a problem with marketing, or you just think that marketing has to do with television or out of home advertising or launching a commercial on television, then you should think about digital strategy. And so that's where, I started to get callbacks and say, with regards to people saying, hey, okay, well, how can we scale, basically? How can we scale in terms of getting people into these theaters? And with the onslaught of Netflix coming into play, we're talking about the year is 2006, when Netflix went from distributing DVDs to the home to the internet, in which you had to go to the website, and Netflix was like, oh my God, you can watch movies on your laptop now. That's when Hollywood started to really get nervous, especially with the piracy and the BitTorrent sites, with BitTorrent sites, or like pirated sites like Napster. So that's where I just basically carved my own niche in terms of helping people market and helping people. When I say people, I'm talking about the industry, just navigate through the various different turning points of where film and television productions were being repurposed on the internet. Hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. So you were in a world where you're walking into boardrooms, you're dealing with legal, you're dealing with all kinds of individuals.
Right.
What kind of hurricane force winds were you dealing with, and how did you navigate that?
Wow, it's a lot to unpack. The rooms that I went into, or I was allowed to go into, were, well, let me just go back to my upbringing. Due to the fact that my mom was a computer engineer and my dad was just he was a man's man, and my grandmother came out of civil rights in terms of, marching and taking money from New York all the way down to the South for freedom fighters. I had a village that basically just reminded me that wherever I go, in any room that I enter, I represent my family. I
Yeah.
represent my last name first. Not my first name. I'm working for my last name. So that was an edict that was hammered in my brain before I stepped outside the house. And so when I was blessed to walk into some of these rooms, there was a lot of obstacles because the Norman culture was a black young man from the inner city wasn't supposed to even know the various different nuances of business. Number one. Number two, I wasn't supposed to understand the vernacular. There's a saying that a lot of people don't know, but I'm going to say it. There's a saying in business where, if you're trying to go to a particular point by way of, forcing yourself, or you're trying to move in a particular fashion, that person who you're trying to convince is always moving the goalpost, right? And I've heard that a lot in my community, my Black community. They're always moving the goalpost, always moving the goalpost, right? And how they do that, and when I say they, I'm talking about people that control these particular environments, these ecosystems. How they do that is by way of changing the vernacular, right, in the moment, right? And so my grandmother, she was a stickler, right? God bless her. She was the stickler in terms of understanding the English language, right? Not American, big difference. The English language, right? And understanding, when to hold them and when to fold them. And so how I was able to overcome that was I always had her in the back of my mind. I had my dad, on the other side of my shoulder, be a man, shake hands, make sure you have a strong grip. Then my grandmother was, she always said, make sure that, when you are presenting yourself, listen to what they're saying, but more importantly, listen to what they aren't saying. She always taught me to look at facial expressions, mannerisms, hand gestures. Those things, a lot of young people, they just don't have that understanding in terms of walking into these rooms. So how I was able to overcome that was taking those particular teachings in the home on how to conduct myself in those various different rooms, even if I didn't know the language. When I say the language, yes, they're speaking English, but they're speaking a different type of English, right? They're speaking banking and finance, right? They're speaking tech, or they're speaking about, legal, as you eloquently said earlier, But I did understand that the body language and the inflections to certain words that they were saying to me were, even though they were foreign, I can disseminate whether or not they were going to open the door for me a little further, or they weren't. And that's how I was literally able to navigate prejudice or racism or bigotry in those rooms without letting them know that I was either upset, angry. It's called having emotional intelligence, basically. So that's how I was able to navigate.
Yeah, I'm reminded, but by the way, folks, people who are watching live, and one of the benefits of watching live is you can participate. If you're watching this on YouTube, on Spotify, or anything else, this is a podcast. But those who are live, feel free to exercise your fingers, ask any questions, no holds barred. And if it's germane to our topic, we will bring it in, and Jason will respond. I'm reminded of Shaquille O'Neal. He was talking about how when he would go in to a legal type setting, and the people would talk to his lawyer, not to him. And he decided then to become a lawyer, to understand the legal language, so they would be dealing directly with him. Now, when you felt hurricane force winds coming against you in a negotiation type of situation, when do you call it out, and when do you like you talked about emotional intelligence, just let it go and maybe call it out later? How do you figure that out?
We're getting into the psychological profile of J. Snake Swanston. Okay, then. Well, it's 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 really not hard to explain, but it's hard to explain. It takes experience. It's I The only thing I can attribute it to is God. It's like it's a feeling that I get. When I know that I'm getting resistance with regards to the way the person is rendering the information in real time, or they're being dismissive in real time. Uh, and how I respond to it, I smile, and I understand that this person may not want me to engage them any further. I'll give you a case in point. I was in a pitch meeting for a major cable network with my technology, and the vice president was there, and this is a multi-billion-dollar cable company, and I'm very jovial. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I'm gonna get a partnership and everything. And the vice president, he was cool, but the engineers were they were just upset at the fact that they didn't create this technology. They didn't let up. The vice president caught on to it, and then because they were so upset and adamant at the fact that this particular technology wasn't developed at that time. We're talking about 2008. The air in the room basically shifted. I mean, I'm talking about in real time, Dr. Freeman. And, the vice president looked at them. These are three senior engineers that, obviously can write the same thing I can write code. And he said to them, well, how come you guys haven't created this? Even though I'm there to pitch for a partnership, because my technology can bring them to the next level or can scale. And they looked dumbfounded, but then they got angry at me. When I say angry at me, they looked at me, right? And they were like, well, we can do this. So vice president looked back at me, even though he signed my NDA, my non-disclosure agreement with a non-compete clause. And he says, well, it'll be great to partner with you, but I don't think that's going to be viable because, quite frankly, we just rather just buy the source code. And in that moment right there, I knew to the whole topic of discussion. And so I had to smile and I said, okay, well, I thank you very much for the offer. I don't want $64 million, for a simple source code. I'd rather partner with you. But because I realized that, and I took it as, obviously I'm not a proven model, even though my technology is robust, as we say in the tech world. I took it as, he didn't want to partner with me because, quite frankly, for whatever reason, I said, thank you very much. I shook his hand. And, the senior engineers turned around. They said, hey, listen, we should work on some other things. And so, again, my point for saying all this is that, just having discernment and knowing when to talk about your anger in the moment it takes a lot of experience, Dr. Freeman, and it's one of those things you have to practice at home. I practice on a daily basis not to be upset, because I have an obstacle. I practice in the mirror, how am I going to respond if, I play these scenarios out. What if this person says no? What if they say yes? What if they say maybe? What if they ask me about where I'm from? I've been asked questions in pitch meetings where they didn't want to know about my technology. They wanted to understand, well, how can a kid, quote unquote, from Harlem create this technology that can debacle the cable industry? Do you have a Chinese guy, or an Asian kid trapped in the basement in Harlem? These were comments that were made to me, raising capital for my company. And as off-putting as those comments were, I did find ways to call up my ancestors, in these particular instances, my grandmother and my dad, who wasn't there, at the time. Obviously, I was by myself and say, what would they do? What would my grandmother do? When she was marching, and how she took those hits, how she got spit on, by integrating school in Brooklyn, Hawk spit on by a white kid. How did she take that and walk in and still integrate because she knew that I was coming, and if she can be spit on by kids, high school kids, because she wanted a better education and she didn't do anything, and she held her head high, she wiped it off, and she put on her moccasins, and she went back to school, she became what she became, then I can't hold a candle to that. If someone just says, hey, do you have an Asian kid, trapped in Harlem creating this technology? You know what I mean? So that's how I overcome, these hurricanes.
Thank you. Louis Davidson says, my mother told me you can always tell if you listen carefully. Mm-hmm. For example, there's a difference between obnoxious and precocious. It tells you nothing about the behavior, only about the person observing and defining. So you need to listen carefully. Great insight, Louis. We're going to take a break now, and we're going to come back on the other side, and I'd like to hear your comment on that. We're going to take a break right now with our sponsor. We've got the swag here with Rosetta Universe, and go to the QR code above, and it's chiefmischiefmaker.com if you can't access the QR code. Mel, let's go.
As a modern metaphor for cracking codes in 7 steps, problem solving is less complex.
That's a kind of a jingle I wrote and produced about the Rosetta Universe, our sponsor. And what I'd like to encourage is for you to check out the QR code above. It'll take you to a link tree. And the number one in the link tree is Rosetta Universe. And check it out. There's a media center you'll be taken to once you click on that image. And Jason, before we get back to the comment from Louis, I'd like for you to kind of share just quickly. You're part of the advisory board, and what is it about the Rosetta Universe that has captured your attention?
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm honored to be on the advisory board of the Rosetta Universe. So again, thank you, Dr. Freeman, for just seeing something in me, and especially in being an asset to the Rosetta Universe. But the whole thing about the Rosetta Universe that really attracts me is the historical importance of coding, because the Rosetta Stone is one of those artifacts that talks about decoding, and me being a computer scientist and writing code, I think that every young person, every person really on planet Earth needs to understand how important the Rosetta Stone is to human history. But by me being on the actual board and giving input in terms of how to bring that particular information into the future, I think it's an honor. Rosetta Universe is one of those ecosystems. I like to call it ecosystem. It's not just an entity, but it's an ecosystem in which people really can take away the importance of decoding languages and decoding scribes, right? You know how you have the Egyptians with their hieroglyphs. Well, the Rosetta Stone is something that's equivalent to that, but more importantly, it allows people to delve into how the beginning of software development started. When people were writing in code on stone. So I'm very appreciative and I'm honored to be on the board, and I'm also honored at the fact that you just take me and my little wacky ideas to add to the Rosetta universe, which I call just a magnanimous ecosystem of information, and just the board is just awesome. So if you guys are watching all over the planet, definitely log on, get pamphlets, join us, and let's keep on moving the movement forward with the universe.
It's by the way, folks, Jason will be, his team will be designing the Metaverse version of the Rosetta universe. So I'm very excited about that. And you'll see a kind of an image that gives you a flavor of what that might look like. Now, we have this comment from Louis about listening, but I'd like for you to incorporate into this question that I have. It has been said that someone, that is going into the space, a young Black man into technology and innovation, you have not only win, but you just have to do things 2 times, 3 times better in order to be accepted as average. And I was wondering, how do you deal with the pressure? Once again, we're talking to people from around the world who are maybe, they're aficionados in video game. They would love to get into the space itself. And I know every time you and I get on the phone, I get out my pad and my pen, and I start taking notes because you are spitting knowledge all the time. And so if you can spit some knowledge to someone watching at this time, or seeing this on YouTube or whatever, spit away.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Freeman, for that hip hop colloquialisms that you so eloquently laid out before I answer. So allow me to spit some knowledge. But I it's one of those things where, man, I have to attribute all of the obstacles and the journey and hurdling over these particular experiences to my upbringing. If there's a saying, right, in the Black community, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going, right? And so because I was able to understand from whence I came, in terms of all of my ancestors, it gave me strength, right? So that when I was in a uncomfortable environment, whether it's Silicon Valley, I'm not saying Silicon Valley is uncomfortable, but for a Black man like myself, it can be uncomfortable because you're expected, to know everything. When I say everything, I'm talking about everything. You know what I mean? You're not because if you do not know the answer to anything that another culture asks of you, whether it's an Indian programmer, a Caucasian programmer, then you are automatically vilified, right? You're automatically, it's one of those things where it's like, you didn't know that. Well, but I thought you knew this, So I overcome it by way of making sure that I've crossed all of my crossed all of my T's, right? And dotted all of my I's.
Well, some of us cross our eyes too.
Right. Well, that's called dyslexia, right? But I make sure I cross all of my T's and dot all of my I's by way of studying. So my grandmother and my dad, oh my God bless them, right? They used to, I was 13 years old. I entered college at 13 in the beginning, right? There was man, right? So I entered college at 13. I went to NYU, New York University's Science and Technology entry program, right? It was only quote unquote Black there. And when I got in, it was one of those things where my family unit was like, okay, now you're in there. So, you got to know everything. And I'm like, what kind of pressure is this? So what they did was when I brought the textbooks home, right, for science, the introduction to, geometry, trigonometry, whatever. My grandmother, my dad, they would give me coffee, first off, caffeine to keep me up because I'm from the old school. And then, they're from the old school and I'm from that school, right? And then they said, you have to read 3 or 4 chapters ahead. And I said, why? I said, the white kids in the, because we had Chinese kids in there, the Chinese kids, they're not reading as much as that. You have to. And I said, why? Because of the color of your skin, my grandmother would say. You have to know everything, because you're just not going out there and, you got in this program. It was only 2 of us. It was me and Todd Lum. Todd was black, but his mother was Asian, and, whatever. So he was black, but he wasn't black like us, right? We used to tease, but we were just it was just 2 of us in there. When I say us, like, we didn't care about his mom being Asian, but because it was black. And we were like, like fish out of a water, like 2 flies in a cup of milk. And, we had to read these chapters, because when we got into class the next day, as sure as I'm having this interview, the professor would ask us the questions, and the way they would ask it, it was like, we didn't know. It was some underlying condescension, because I was familiar with what condescension felt like, and I knew it, and to the point where I had to understand, you have to know everything when you're walking into these environments, because they expect you not to know because of the color of your skin, because of what society deems you to be. You're always sweating. My grandmother, my father used to say, we're always sweating to the world. What that means is, if you look at a successful black man, he's either sweating, which basically means he's either performing, which he's sweating, or he's playing a sport and he's sweating there. So that's all people expect us to do, is sweat. And they don't expect us to think. They don't expect us to be mathematicians. They don't expect us to be scientists. They don't expect us to be, logistical thinkers. And so when we come into those environments and we're able to think, it could be off-putting to other cultures, because they already have this preconceived notion that you're supposed to be sweating, right? You're supposed to be ignorant and uncouth. So how I was able to navigate, it was calling on my grandmother, calling on those experiences of reading ahead, so that I knew the answer. So that's how I'm able to really navigate through those environments, Dr. Freeman. I just call on it. I don't know how to explain it, but I have to know everything. And so when you're calling me and we're talking, we're having 3-4 hour conversations on the phone, which I love, because we're intellects, right? It's one of those things where I was raised to teach. I was raised to give information. We call them cheat codes, right? Even when I was in the music industry, working with all of these A-list platinum artists, and I realized, hey, wait a minute, there's a void that needs to be filled, and that void is, they don't know where their mechanical royalties are getting ready to be spent or be shared. And so let me give it, and that's why, I am the way I am. So yes, when we're talking, you get out the pen, and I just like sharing information, because I know you like it.
I love it. Louis, thank you. He says, that's my point, Jason. If you're white, you're precocious. If you're black, you're obnoxious. That's the hurricane bigotry at work, subtle but deadly. Yeah. Thank you, Louis.
Thank you, Louis. Definitely.
Incorporate that in response to Louis, but I'd like for you to talk a little bit about, walk us through the process of your journey of developing your patent, from idea to legal protection, and the hurdles you faced along the way. That some hurdles might be amplified by race.
Whew. Oh man. We have time? So
we've got try to do this in about 7 minutes if you can.
Fairly simple. Great. I can do it in 5. Wow. So with regards to the inception of the idea of having a streaming TV platform that that allows people to watch TV and buy merchandise from the scene of a movie, all came from a conversation I had with my mom. And she was on Shopping Network, and I said, what, Mom, I can create a website for you to basically, watch TV and shop. And that's literally how the inception of the patent of OVNIO started to manifest. And we're talking about 2006. So of course, by me being a great study, my dad was like, this is awesome. And he said, you're probably going to need security. But he said, start studying. And so what I did was I started studying everything I could get my hands on the internet with regards to the business of cable, the business of streaming TV, and the business of distributing content. excuse me, content throughout the planet, where we were in terms of internet distribution. So with regards to the idea, it started to manifest. And then I started to make my feelers calls to people who were in the movie and film industry. And I said, what do you need? What is a void? I started jotting it down. And then I still have the notebook, Dr. Freeman, in which I started drawing out my diagram of how I wanted it to look with the front end of the site. And then I started to write the various different languages and the specs. And then I started to reach out to various different other engineers, because when you have something so magnanimous, like I like that word, magnanimous, right? It's a nice made up word. Something so grand as OVNIO, you need people to help you. And so what I did was I basically just started to reach out to various different engineers, and I said, hey, these are the specs. I need it for the desktop user, and then eventually the mobile user, because those are two different types of engineers. People don't realize that. And then the hurdle was how to get, because of where we were at the time, how to get people to watch TV and be able to buy something without it buffering. And that was the $64,000 question. And I figured it out. And I took my little hip hop dollars and I moved overseas to India because they had low internet connection. Well, certain areas in India had low internet connection, just like in America. But I went to India because they were the leaders in terms of software development, in my mind, from what I knew. And I started testing, and then I hopped my black behind to Jamaica. Then I went to Peru, and because I wanted it to be a global platform. And then I came back, and now I need to protect it, and I didn't know how to protect it. I knew I needed a patent, so I went to lawyer A. I got a provisional, which was a 1-year patent. Then I went to lawyer B, lawyer C, that represented cable companies, and they were just terrible. They wanted me to sell it, which I didn't understand that. And then I eventually kept on knocking on doors, establishing relationships. So I wore many hats in order to get the platform protected. And then I was able to meet somebody from Harvard Business, and he introduced me to my patent attorney, which I love to death, from the Philippines. And he said, wow, he worked, he was a patent officer at the USPTO, which was a godsend. And he said, wow, you really have something, Jason. I was like, well, I know. He says, yeah, can you protect it? And I was like, can you protect it? He's like, oh yeah, it's definitely patentable. I'm like, okay, let's go. And so he wrote it so eloquently. He wrote my abstract, and I was just taken aback. And we could have been rejected, but what happened was we sent it in, and seven examiners looked at it, and they gave me a full, what is called a utility patent, which covers 20 years. And but again, it's nerve-wracking, because when you go for a utility patent, you can be rejected. So you have to, but the great thing was that because I'm a game developer, that's how I started first, and I play video games. Not now, but because I'm a game developer, I was able to create the front end, which no other streaming TV platform had, in terms of meshing all of these great experiences, being able to buy, being able to, watch TV, being able to order food, all these various different experiences that you do on other websites. How do you conjoin those experiences under one particular small window, like a mobile device or a tablet? I was able to successfully do that. And then on the back end, I was able to explain how the inner workings were how the inner workings happened, and explain it. So because my patent attorney actually worked for he was at Microsoft, him and his wife, they understood it as well. And that basically that's what happened. And I never forget, when they granted me my patent, and I called my dad up on FaceTime, and I said, Dad, we got a patent. And my dad's like this big guy. He's like big, big muscular, big dude, right? Boxer type, like Jack Johnson type, pun intended. And my dad started weeping.
Wow.
And it scared me. I
Mm.
was like, I'm a man's man, right? I'm like, because we don't cry in front of each other. I was like, Dad, are you crying? He said, No, I'm not crying. But he was weeping. I was like, you got to. I was like, but he was so proud, and he was so happy to see that we got the seal and we got the patent and everything. And now it's one of those things where anybody who wants to copy what we are about to launch on the planet would basically have to come see us, and we can license it as well. So which is what we did.
Amazing. Henry
That's 7
Longtree.
minutes. That was
Oh,
7
you did
minutes.
it. You nailed it. You nailed
Okay.
it. That could have been a TED Talk right there.
Thank you.
Henry Longtree, there's a joke about the subtlety of language. The prospective groom asked the bride, Darling, we never talked about sex after marriage. She replied, infrequently. And he asked, Is that one word or two? I see what you're doing there, Henry. Anyway, we'll move right along. Now, Jason, what
Yes.
does holding? It took 14 years, from what I understand, for you to go through this whole process. 14 years. What does holding a patent mean to you? Now, I'm not just talking about legally or professionally, but personally. When you look at the whole landscape out there of patent holders, what does it mean to you?
Wow. It means that you're born. It means that, to me, it means that, I'm free. I'm a free man. What I mean by that historically is, had this been the 1800s and I developed an invention, my slave master would own that invention because I was property, right? Which a lot of slaves who invented things, they were subjected to giving up their inventions to their slave owners. So it means that, the government respects my intellect, if that makes any sense to you. It means that I'm part of a small community of Black American inventors that have a piece of paper that states that you are intelligent, and that you're not only intelligent, but you have something that the brightest minds of our U.S. government, respect. Patent examiners, they do this for an actual living. These are technical. These guys are diabolical in terms of how they forensically go down. Your it's called an abstract. Your diagrams. So what it means for me to have a patent that is protected for all of these years, it means that I've arrived. I'm part of a small club, of Black inventors, like Marianne Croak, who invented, voice over internet protocol. The reason why you and I are able to speak is because of Marianne Croak, who's still living. She's
right.
in her 80s, and she has 88 patents. And I'm like, how did these people get all these patents? And I realized because it was in the 70s, people weren't, but anyway, but Marianne Croak, there's Mark, there's Dr. Mark Dean, who invented the color screen that we use on our Apple computers and on our PCs, who has a boatload of patents that he sold to IBM. But these are pioneers. So owning a patent and having a patent under your belt as a Black kid from Harlem, because I look at me as a kid sometimes, is emotional, because now, when I go into a pitch meeting to an investor or an investment group, family office, whoever, it's not, hey, I have an app, I have a website. No, it's like, I have a patent. And then of course the conversation is, well, what, because legal is in the room sometimes. Well, is it a provisional? Because provisional only covers you for a year. And I'm like, no, it's a utility. And that's when the whole air changes. The air in the room changes. So having a patent is definitely something that I'm very, very thankful to God that, that it went through. I'm thankful that the ancestors, are helping me and they're guiding me. And I'm really thankful to the fact that, it didn't get rejected, and I'm able to go to any major streaming platform and say, hey guys, you want to do some business with me because I'm the only one in town with this particular type of technology, and this can help you scale your business without it being stolen from me. Like many of our Black inventions, and when I say Black inventions, I'm talking about inventions from Black American thought processes, because as a computer scientist, what people don't understand is when you write software and you come from a particular culture, this is what's wrong with AI, obviously. You're going to get the computations coming from various different thoughts of mind. So if I like grits, I'm going to give you the answer from a grits format in layman's terms. You know what I mean? So there you have it. That's what having a patent means to me. It means freedom.
That's very profound. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mel Albin says, I don't know if you're aware, Jason, but nearly every federal agency keeps data on race, but the U.S. Patent Office does not, because it was decided in the early 19th century not to include race in patents because they do not want to give credit to Black inventors. They're very interesting.
Wow.
What I'd like to, the folks, thank you, Mel.
Thank you, Mel.
I'd like to share with our listeners and our viewers. Right now, there are people of all ages, all backgrounds, all ethnicities that are watching, or a lot of them. And I want to speak. I'd like for you to speak to folks who are maybe retired, elderly. The good book, the Bible says, bring forth fruit in your old age. And a lot of people lose their vision. They've got a lot of wisdom, but not a lot of energy to implement it. A lot of young people have a lot of energy, but not a lot of wisdom. And you're at that sweet spot right now where you have energy and wisdom to a great degree and beyond your years. And I'd like for you just to kind of speak to people. We've got about 4 minutes or so, 3 minutes. Speak to them. Get your pencils and papers out and spit away.
Yeah. So to the silent generation, which are the listeners who are in their late 60s, early 70s, like my dad's age, right? Because Dr. Freeman's still a teenager. To the silent generation, what I like to say is, team up with a younger person if you can, and just listen to them in terms of what they're into. Don't resist it, don't negate it, just listen, open your ears. It may sound like noise, but what I've learned is that younger people are literally searching for that wisdom from the silent generation. In reference to the younger generation, if you have a nana, if you have an auntie, if you have an uncle, if you have a father, if you have a mother that's older, obviously, than you, try to listen and record them on your iPhone or Android, whether it's audio or whether it's visual. And the reason why I'm saying that, because this is emotional for me, because my mother's not here. And I had a lot of her stuff on hard drive. And I just basically lost all of my videos of my mom, my grandma, and even my dad, even though my dad is living. But I had a lot of great stuff because I like to document, my journey with my family. But to the young people, the wise are here for us because they can help us navigate, even though they may not know the current trends, but they can help us navigate through various different obstacles we may have personally. But how you give thanks and you pay homage to those elders that are literally in your immediate circle is by documenting. And with technology now, you can document by way of recording them on your iPhone or Android. And then what you do is you back it up, meaning you take that little video clip and you send it to your Gmail account and store it. That's what I started to do, and I started to tell a lot of young people to do. Now, what that will do for you as those people get older, as your parents or your grandparents get older and they start to go off to glory, you can call up on those videos and those audios and listen. And trust me, it will give you comfort. And so, and how to bond those two particular generations, I think technology, where we are today, can do that by way of, if two generations just come together and they sit down and they just literally open their ears and listen. I don't like some of the music today, but I do understand that the younger people, they do look to me to give them guidance, even though I don't want to hear drill music. But
Jason,
drill is a
we got to bring this plane in for a landing. Thank you so much for coming on today, and
thank you
being
so
part
much
of this show. And it's just a joy to know you and to hear what is in you. You're emptying the library within every time you talk with me and other people. Well, folks, Jason Swanston, go to the QR code, chiefmischiefmaker.com. 3 words, chiefmischiefmaker.com. And you'll find all the information how to get a hold of him on the link tree. Ebidibidi, that's all, folks.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.